There is a report out that the average life expectancy, as we know, for a cat or a dog is between 10 and 15 years, but that there's a new scientific breakthrough which could give your pet a longer life. And Dr. Carol Hurley, a veterinarian with the Waltham Center for Pet Nutrition in England, has developed what they're calling a kind of superfood. It's an additive, and she's with us this morning from our London bureau. So this is antioxidants, Dr. Hurley, which do what?
Yes, good morning. It's a unique blend of antioxidants that, when added together, they work in combination to help protect the cells at the level of the DNA. So they help to prevent damage to DNA in the cells.
We know that humans can take antioxidant supplements themselves, but you're saying you're actually able to measure the amount of DNA repair or lack of damage?
That's right. We already know that the DNA that exists in every cell is damaged up to 10,000 times a day by what's called free radicals. And this is a normal process that happens from exposure to sunlight, to pollution, from stress, from routine exercise.
But so what are the implications of DNA in longevity? In other words, if what you're able to measure in longevity, how long can these pets live?
Right. Well, as DNA damage starts to accumulate, we start to see age-related diseases such as arthritis, cancers, cataracts, all the sorts of things that we see in people with aging, our pets can get as well. And so what we've seen is, by being able to test the amount of damage in cells, we've adapted a test from the human field at the Waltham Center, and we've been able to combine these ingredients fed to pets, and found that in dogs fed this food for 2 months, there's a 26% decrease in the amount of damage to their DNA.
But you don't know exactly what that means in terms of years achieved, extra years.
Well, yeah. Not yet, and that's what we're doing, is following these animals along. The idea is that, for instance, it takes only one cell to be damaged to start the process of a cancer or start the process of an age-related disease. And so what we're looking for is that these animals have the best potential for their lifespan.
All right,
so
well, everybody is going to...
slower aging process.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Everybody's going to be following this, of course, not only for animals, but for humans as well, coming up. And thanks for telling us about it. I gather it'll be available in about a year. So we'll let everybody out there know. But let's get the weather. Tony Perkins is here.
All right, thank you, Diane. Before we get to the weather, every day our producers survey the crowd to find out interesting things, interesting stories, and we have learned a couple of things this morning. In fact, we're starting a new feature. First of all, we've noticed that for some reason, several people in our audience have worn various shades of purple. Just by coincidence, did you all call each other and plan this?
No.
No. And even Eddie, come here, is on our crew. He's wearing purple as well. And Jeremy is also wearing a shade of purple. Very odd. I'm not sure why that is. All right, get out of here. Now, the other thing that we've noticed, and we're very excited about this, almost everyone in our audience is the same height. Can you pan around? Isn't that, except for just a few people. You will have to leave. I'm sorry. And this gentleman on the end, sir, with the glasses, you'll have to leave. I'm sorry, you can't be a part of the crowd today. All right, now that looks better. I'm happy. Take a look at what's happening with weather conditions around the nation. We start with the high temperatures for today. It is going to be a warm one in the south, but these temperatures are pretty much seasonable for most of the nation. 70s in the upper Midwest. We'll see some 80s throughout much of the U.S. Desert Southwest, of course, over 100 degrees again. Take a look at the highlights for today. New York City, beautiful day here. 80 degrees today. St. Louis, 83. Albuquerque, you're looking at 87. San Diego, a pleasant 74. Where will we see rain? We'll see some scattered showers in portions of the west. Most of the west will be dry. Look for possible flooding in southern Texas, central and southern Florida, where the rain will be heavy. That's a look at what's happening with the weather around the nation. Now, here's what's happening in your neighborhood.
Good morning. Certainly no rain here. Nothing but dry skies. Next chance for rain not even until Thursday afternoon, with a slight chance of a shower. Today and tomorrow, mostly sunny, highs in the upper 70s and low 80s. Thursday could see a slight chance of a shower, and then smooth sailing once again.
You have to leave, too. You're a little too tall. Thank you very much. This weather report brought to you by Walmart. If you'd like to be in our studio audience, you have to be 5'8", and just send an email to abcnews.com. Diane, back to you.
Okay, Tony. Well, an ad for the new HBO series, The Mind of the Married Man, says, in marriage, no one can hear you scream. Why am I laughing?
Yeah, right.
But what would it be like if we could hear inside the man who was married? Thoughts, everything from infidelity to a lot of other things that we can't talk about on morning television. Well, the new series is called, despite what he wants it to be, the male version of Sex and the City. And to hear more about what goes on in the mind of its creator and star, we're joined by Mike Binder, and it's good to have you here.
Thank you. It's good to be here. And I actually don't mind. I think Sex and the City is a great show. So it's, you know, I don't mind. It's just the show. It's such an easy handle to say it's you know, a male version of Sex and the City. But.
Okay. Where do you start when you say, I'm going to do a series about the mind of a married man? What's the first thing you start doing? Jotting down your own thoughts?
I start preparing for my wife to move out is what that's the first thing. No. Actually, she likes the show. My wife is, but I think the idea was to do a show that tries to capture how men talk when their wives aren't around. And you know, one of the things they talk about the most is sex. So that's really what people have caught on to what we're doing, you know. But I think that there's a lot of things that people talk about, and
what are the principal differences in the way men talk about sex and women do?
I think that men are a little more two-faced about it.
How do you mean?
They talk one way with their friends, and then with their wives, they're a completely different person. And I think that's the truth, and I think that women kind of know that and are more comfortable with it. I really, one thing I think doing this show, you kind of learn that women don't want to hear everything. They kind of assume that we're messed up, that we're a little screwed up. And it's like, just go talk to your friends about that, please.
All right, we have a clip from the show, and it just gives you a little sense of something when, well, he's talking about something his wife found.
I found a file open, one I never leave up.
Dad, I found porn on your computer.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Like pornography?
Yes.
What kind?
What does it matter what kind? These pictures of naked women, Doug. Naked, not my wife women. What does it matter what kind?
She hadn't said anything yet?
Not Donna. She'll gather her facts first.
Right.
Find the site I downloaded it from. Trace the credit card bill.
That wasn't me, by the way. One of the writers came up with that whole storyline. I have purely work of research on my computer.
Right. You've heard about such things.
Absolutely.
Do men talk as much about their appearances, or ever about their appearances?
I don't think so. Not in my experience. Some men do. You know. Men talk about relationships at all, or do they save that for home? Yeah, no. They talk about relationships. They do. They talk about their relationships a lot with each other. More than at least the men that I hang out with. You know, you don't know. There's so many men out there. I think there's a good 1,500 of them at last count. But the ones that I know, the 1,400 that I know, seem to talk about, you know, relationships in terms of what isn't working. More than what's working. In all your research for this, what did you learn about the mind of a married man that you didn't know? What I think is interesting, and where the show's point of view is, men want to be married. Men like to be married. They like to complain about it. But if you see a guy who's married get divorced, you know what he does? He runs out and he gets married again. Men like to be married, and single men dream of finding the right person to be married. They're not single because they want to be single. They always think one day they're going to get married. Men like to be married, and that's the point of view of the show. And very funny. Thank you. It's what I've heard. The word around the shop here is that it's truly funny, and it's called The Mind of the Married Man, and it premieres, you should know, on HBO. When does it premiere? Tonight. There's a sneak preview tonight, and then Sunday night it starts airing after Band of Brothers. All right. Coming up, men get their revenge. And we'll be right back.
ABC 7 is on your side.
By making your mornings easier.
And it starts here with our Good Morning Washington promise. From the time you wake up to the time you walk out your door.
You'll get your full weather and traffic updates every 10 minutes on the 7s.
And in between, the latest news from overnight. What happened while you slept? It's our promise to you. Weather and traffic every 10 minutes on the 7th.
Plus the news from overnight.
It's the Good Morning Washington Promise, and it's only on ABC 7. Proud to be on your side.
Behind in the polls, Mark Early's launched false attacks on Mark Warner. The press says Early's taken the low road. His attacks are absurd, repulsive, ugly. Early's claims about Mark Warner are dead wrong. Fabrication, a smear. They insult voters. It's typical old-style politics. Mark Early, no positive plan. Negative ads that don't tell the truth. Virginia deserves better.
Vehicle history report, extensive.
When it comes to buying a used car, do you really know what you're getting? Toyota does, because beyond getting legendary Toyota quality, dependability, and reliability, there's a few other important things you get too.
Like 6.9% APR financing up to 60 months on all certified used Camrys, Solaras, and Corollas. Toyota certified used vehicles. We're good on our words. Available exclusively at your Toyota certified used vehicle dealer.
CarMax.com has a great selection of used cars online. We carry nearly every make and model. Find a car from any of the thousands we sell nationwide and have it transferred to the store nearest you. CarMax, the way car buying should be.
You asked for used cars you can depend on, so we created CarMax, where every used car comes with a 30-day limited warranty and a 5-day money-back guarantee. We even offer extended warranties that protect you for up to 100,000 miles. CarMax, the way car buying should be.
ABC next Tuesday. The season starts here. Dharma and Greg, the episode you've been waiting for.
Dharma, I'm so sorry.
Spin City, the moment you thought would never happen.
I'm back.
And from the creator of NYPD Blue, Tom Everett Scott and Emmy Award winner Kim Delaney.
You want to play hardball with me, I will break your skull.
You already tried that once.
Philly. Dharma and Greg Spin City and the series premiere of Philly. ABC next Tuesday. The season starts here.
Sarah, the Duchess of York, is with us. It's always nice to have her back. No stranger to overcoming obstacles in her life, as you probably know, from weight problems to the emotional problems of her darkest days following her divorce from Prince Andrew. This week, she's off to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where, in what is believed to be the first challenge of its kind, she's going to help residents of an entire county overcome their obstacles to losing weight. And she joins us now. Off to Waukesha County in Wisconsin, you are.
Morning, Charlie.
A third of the people there, supposedly overweight. That's about 300,000 people, I guess, in rough terms. Each of them takes off 10 pounds. That's 3 million pounds you're going to help people lose.
Well, I think it's all about support, isn't it? It is a thought, isn't it? But
yes.
It is about support. And Weight Watchers is really about helping people through group settings. And if you think about it, 3 million pounds, and it's all about people talking and going down to the local library or wherever they sign up. But it's about a joint group getting together saying, yes, we're going to make a difference.
That's not only a whole football team, that's the whole National Football League or the English Soccer League or whatever.
Or
that
something
you're
like that.
Losing in weight. But how do you do that? I mean, do you cajole them? Do you scold them? Do you plead with them? Do you lecture with them? What do you do?
I think it's about education on what are the side effects of being overweight and what disease, diabetes or what other diseases stem from being obese or being overweight. I mean, it's not just about health and fitness and nutrition. It's about the whole package. The heart problems that stem from it and various other things.
And emotional problems.
And emotional problems. Well, emotional problems, that was my problem. I ate to compensate for my feelings.
Right.
And a lot of people think, no, I'm fine, I'm all right. And then they go and eat 5 cookies, you know. It's the thing of why do you not want to look at your own problems?
You wrote very frankly in Rosie's magazine about depression, about the fact that you were really down at one point. And is that equated in your mind, eating and depression and tough times?
No question about it. In my case, when I had managed to make a complete nonsense of my life, whether it be financial, whether I'd gone through a divorce, I just thought I was worthless. And so what I did was I got very sad and very down, and I ate and ate and ate and got larger and larger and larger and then beat myself up even more, and it's that vicious circle. And you never think you can get off the carousel ride, but you just can, you know. You can with support, and that's what really we're saying in Waukesha County.
That's a great phrase, making a nonsense of my life. I mean, it's a wonderfully light phrase, and yet it really bespeaks of a very tough. I mean, it's a light phrase connected to very tough times that you were going through.
Well, it's just, you know, to publicly self-humiliate yourself is something.
Did you feel that way, really?
Something quite huge to do, isn't it?
Did you really feel that way?
Oh, absolutely. It was
really?
rock bottom, yeah, rock bottom.
And the weight loss then brought back the self-esteem and was a critical way to reverse that?
No, taking charge of my life, taking charge of my finances, taking charge of the way I was going to go forward, and actually getting forward and not sitting in a corner shaking was kind of an achievement.
So, and weight was just one aspect.
Weight wasn't. Weight was the symptom of how bad I was feeling.
Right.
And so so everyone could see I was getting larger. There must be some problem, you know. And the thing is I then dealt with all my issues, and in dealing with it, I'm sitting here today with a little more confidence.
Yeah, and you're going to do that all for an entire county of people in Walker.
Well, we can have a go, can't we?
Let me ask you about something that got a lot of publicity in this country, and I'm sure in England. And I know you're very uncomfortable with questions about the royal family, but it was so publicized in this country. A journal, The Spectator in London, which is thought to have very close ties to Buckingham Palace, said that after the celebration of the Queen...
Tell us. So this detective, Charles Benoit, a hero, Port Authority detectives made many drug arrests. He now has to watch this woman go free. He got her, right, with the goods. He did a good job. He's earning his pay, if more. And then he watches a criminal justice system put her through the turnstiles.
Hey, with any luck, he'll get sued for illegal search, too.
Oh, my heavens. Do we know how she answered those 3 questions when she bought the ticket, by the way? That's all I want to know. Did you or anybody you know pack your bag?
To bring on? No, I didn't. Have you had your bags with you at all times? You bet.
You bet I did.
But at 8:47, when we return, I want to bounce this one off of John Gambling as our drive time continues to 11. A California inmate may sue for the right to mail his semen to his wife in hopes of becoming a father.
Won that case in the 9th Circuit. I did a case almost identical. All the prisoner wants is a clean container and a swift messenger case.
You see what I mean, ladies and gentlemen? A cop does his job, the Port Authority cop there in Newark International Airport. He gets smacked. He gets spanked.
He didn't get smacked or spanked. He didn't even get paddled.
A prisoner in jail has the right to send his sperm vis-a-vis Federal Express.
He's not sending it to you, Curtis. I was
Oh, that's a good point.
1-800-848-WABC.
But it's 8:48. It's time for our traffic and our weather update.
An overnight package for you. Thanks,
Mamma mia.
Curtis and Kuby and Eric. Hey, at the big 3 Hudson River crossings, we're looking at about a 30-minute wait upstairs, 20 below, 45 minutes at the Lincoln. The Holland still a solid 30 with a crash cleared on the Newark Bay extension. Midtown Tunnel, 25. Outbound Gowanus now heading down through Brooklyn at the Prospect. A little pokey with a pileup. That's on your left. Up to the Bronx, northbound at the Deegan at the Cross Bronx. Just the right shoulder getting by from a smash. And also southbound on the Bronx River Parkway at the Cross County and Yonkers, a slam. And this report brought to you by Panasonic, inviting you to experience the brilliance and clarity of high-definition television. But be warned, you'll never be satisfied with regular TV again. HD TV made possible by Panasonic at the Wiz. 11 away from 9 o'clock, I'm Don Pachin. In This Morning for Val, it's Ed Levy. Good morning.
And good morning. It's beautiful out there. Humidity down, and temperatures aren't going to be too bad. Partly sunny to mostly sunny today. High temperature around 82 degrees, and northwest wind at 5 to 10. Clear tonight, a little bit on the chilly side, 61 for the low. For tomorrow, Wednesday, mostly sunny, a high in the mid-70s, and Thursday, may have a scattered shower late in the day. Otherwise, partly sunny with a high around 74 to 76 degrees. It's currently 64 degrees in Midtown. We have sunny skies. From the Weather Channel, I'm meteorologist Ed Levy on 77 WABC.
And at 8:50, this portion of Curtis and Kuby is brought to you by Continental Airlines.
Let's talk about the whole kit and caboodle. No one knows what it is, but it's come to be synonymous with the whole enchilada and the whole ball of wax, which is exactly what you get when you fly Continental Airlines Business First. What with concierge service, comfy sleeper seats, extraordinary wines and champagnes, undeniably fine dining, and, of course, mouth-watering sundaes. What more could you want? Well, how about a multi-channel personal entertainment system that has a whole shebang full of movies? Whatever a shebang is. That's not just us blowing smoke, either. Condé Nast Traveler awarded Business First Best Transatlantic and Trans-Pacific Business Class among U.S. airlines. Business First was also voted Best Business Class by subscribers to OAG, the official airline guide. And that's just to name a few. So the next time you want to fly the best, now you know Business First is one kid with a whole lot more caboodle. Continental Airlines. Work hard, fly right. For reservations, call your travel agent, Continental Airlines, or ticket online at continental.com.
This is George Weber in the WABC newsroom with a live special report. There has been either an explosion or some kind of accident at the South tower of the World Trade Center in downtown Manhattan. Thick black smoke is billowing from the building, and there is a gaping hole at about the 100th floor. Firefighters are on the scene. There have been some eyewitness reports that they heard the sound of a plane, and apparently a plane could have crashed into the side of the building. Now, from what it looks like from a distance, it does appear as if something blew out a massive hole on the side of the building. Ron Kuby, you just got to look at that, too. What's it look like to you?
It's hard to tell because the photography shots are far away, but it looks like there's a huge gaping hole ripped in the World Trade Center.
This would have been about the 100th floor, and actually I have a friend who works on the 101st floor of that building, and the way it's looking right now, I mean, there isn't much left of that side of the building.
Well, interesting because right down on Fifth Avenue, we remember, well, not I remember, but in the past years, there was a plane crash into the Empire State Building.
And that's exactly what people are talking about now, the possibility, because witnesses said it sounded like an airplane, but witnesses also said it sounded like a bomb.
Yeah, we're also getting reports, Metro Traffic is just telling me in my earphones, that it was a plane. They're confirming a plane perhaps did crash into the World Trade Center Tower. And again,
all right, so you'll be giving us updates all throughout the John Gambling Show.
We will.
Very good.
Hey, you. Want to tour the great landmarks of New York?
Do you go to Mo Ginsburg?
No. We start in Central Park.
Are they having a huge menswear sale? Because Mo Ginsburg is.
No, but maybe you'd like the Bronx Zoo.
I'll bet that's not as wild as the selection of men's suits, sport coats, pants, and shoes at Mo Ginsburg.
How about the Little Italy?
Speaking of imports, Mo Ginsburg has the best selection of designer names at the best prices.
The Empire State Building?
Mo Ginsburg has great stuff for big and tall guys, too.
How's about Wall Street?
With great suits starting at $199 and jackets starting at $149, Mo Ginsburg's stock is really selling.
Whoa! Maybe we will stop at Mo Ginsburg.
It's the most popular attraction in town.
The Mo Ginsburg sale is on now, with men's suits, sport coats, pants, shoes, sportswear, accessories, and more. Expert alterations available. Visit 162 Fifth Avenue at 21st Street and take a tour of the selection and quality that have made Mo Ginsburg a New York landmark.
Charles and Marlise Lehman of Cresskill, New Jersey.
My husband Charlie had an angiogram, and then his doctor told us he would need heart bypass and valve replacement surgery. We had so many questions, and we were frightened.
Charlie's doctor recommended the Heart and Vascular Institute of New Jersey at Englewood Hospital and Medical Center.
The doctors and staff at Englewood put our minds at ease right away.
Every single question was answered.
They answered all our questions.
They explained that Charlie had problems with his heart and with his blood vessels, and that they would be able to treat both at the same time.
The surgery was successful. The aftercare in the hospital was amazing, and I was home after just a few days.
Expert heart and vascular care in northern New Jersey. Call 201-894-3636 or visit englewoodhospital.com. Ask about our free seminars. From pioneering bloodless surgery to advancing heart and vascular care, Englewood Hospital and Medical Center, changing the way the world practices medicine.
8:54, and Ron, we'll be getting a network update on what appears to be a plane crash into one of the towers of the World Trade Center. And, you know, ironically, I was just speaking about Sheikh Omar Abdelrahman.
Now, don't. Just relax. So far, all they're confirming is it's an airplane.
I'm just asking you, because if anybody would know. Ron, you have represented...
Well, I have some thoughts on it, but I think I'll save those thoughts until after we go live to the network, find out the latest breaking news about this horrific accident, at least what people hope is an accident and not an intentional act.
This is a special report from ABC News. An airplane apparently has crashed into the upper levels of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan in New York. A tremendous amount of smoke is pouring from one of the twin towers of the World Trade Center. There appears to be a gaping hole about a quarter of the way down from the top of the World Trade Center. We have an eyewitness who saw what happened, Joan Fleischer.
I heard the plane very close to the top of the buildings. I looked outside, and I saw it hit, and it exploded immediately.
The plane exploded with a great deal of smoke. We're seeing a better picture now of the World Trade Center, one of the twin towers. There are, of course, two of them.
a gaping hole in the upper levels of the World Trade Center, flame and smoke pouring from the top of that building. No word yet on casualties. This just happened moments ago. A plane crash in the top of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan in New York. I'm Jim Hickey. This has been a special report from ABC News.
And this is Babita Hariani. We'll have more information on this breaking story coming up shortly. Now back to Eric Hastings.
I did it in 3 minutes a day.
I did it in 3 minutes a day.
And I did in 3 minutes a day.
Fact is, thousands of Americans have done it in 3 minutes a day. That's right, in 3 minutes a day, men and women across the country have used FollyGuard to stop hair loss and replace their lost hair. How do they do it? Simple. They use FollyGuard's revolutionary 3-step process. Look, the reasons for hair loss are no secret. An excess of DHT, or bad testosterone, stops follicles from producing healthy hair. FollyGuard combats the bad testosterone and helps you regain your hair and your appearance. Best of all, using FollyGuard takes only 3 minutes a day. No sexual side effects and no costly transplants. Just your own body producing thick, healthy hair where it has stopped growing. FollyGuard is 100% guaranteed or your money back. Call today, invest 3 minutes a day, and watch your lost hair grow back. It's that simple, guaranteed. Call now, 1-800-957-4762. It's guaranteed. 1-800-957-4762. Toll free, 1-800-957-4762. Get your lost hair back with FollyGuard. 1-800-957-4762.
8:57, as you rejoin Curtis and Kuby, a terrible disaster has occurred at the World Trade Center. One of the towers up near about the 100th floor, apparently a plane has crashed in. We don't know the size of the plane at this particular point, according to the eyewitnesses. If we are to consider, Ron, it a normal plane crash, because planes do pass the World Trade Center on their routes to LaGuardia on a regular basis.
It is a regular flight route, but it certainly doesn't look like it could conceivably be a normal commercial jet flight.
But
so
Ron,
the speculation, it's a small private
remember,
plane.
we're just a few blocks away from the 102-story Empire State Building, which has had planes crash in it before at its highest levels. Or, unfortunately, when the World Trade Center was targeted by Muslim extremists back in the early 90s, it was chosen for what reason for that?
I mean, unfortunately, it's something I know a bit about. The Trade Center was specifically chosen by the Islamic jihadists because it was the most conspicuous symbol of American capitalism, American prosperity, and American materialism. The original plan, as conceived by the Islamic bombers, and I want to emphasize there's no indication at this point that this is anything other than an accident, but back then, in the early 90s, the original plan was to blow up one of the towers and actually cause it to collapse onto the other tower. The idea was to bring both of them down. At least that was the allegations at trial, and was ultimately proven against a number of the participants.
Well, that's just speculation, as you pointed out. But in fact, yesterday upon my return from Florida, there are many flights that actually fly directly over the World Trade Center. So, in fact, it may have just been maybe a normal passenger flight or a cargo flight of some type. We'll give you all the details as they break, as we join John Gambling as Drive Time continues with our news staff here of George Weber, Babita Hariani, and our ABC National News correspondent.
No word at this point on any injuries, no word on any fatalities. There does appear massive amounts of smoke billowing out of the building, flames that appear to be out of control, and emergency vehicles and rescue vehicles on the scene right now.
That's right, and the toughest of all jobs is when you have to fight those fires above 80 floors. Firefighters have always said it makes a really tough job that much tougher. So we'll keep you abreast of all the details. Again, if you're just joining us, apparently an aircraft of some type has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center, downtown New York, at about the 100th floor, slightly above. And we'll continue with this coverage throughout the John Gambling Show and throughout the day. All of this on WABC New York. It's 9 o'clock.
This is live coverage from ABC News. I'm Jim Hickey. An airplane has crashed into the upper levels of one of the twin towers of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan in New York. A tremendous amount of smoke is billowing from the upper levels of that tower. There is a gaping hole. Actually, there are two gaping holes in two sides of that building. Several windows have been blown out. There is no word yet on casualties. We have this eyewitness who told us what he saw.
Hello? Okay, my name is Brian Lutz. I'm about 10 blocks away north of the Empire State, of the World Trade Towers. I was looking at the Trade Towers exactly when it happened. I heard this incredibly low noise, and I knew something horrific was about to happen. I dove away from the window, not to be shattered with glass if it was a huge explosion. Within seconds after not having the glass blow into me, I looked back up. There was an incredible billowing wall of fire that shot up, almost obscuring the lower third of the radio tower, which would have been about a 25-story ball of flame. The debris falling, it looked like a blizzard coming off the building.
Brian?
As I look at it now, there's a diagonal angle across the building at about a 45-degree angle, and it looks like just a definite gash. The upper right-hand side looks like it's the corner of a wing that just went straight into the building.
Brian, this is Jim Hickey here in New York. Can you tell us, did you actually see the plane as it smashed into the building?
The second that I heard the noise, I knew a disaster was about to happen, and I've been in an explosion before and had glass blow in. I dove away from the window. As soon as the explosion hit the north side of the north tower, I looked right back at it. The fire and smoke was just beginning to billow. I screamed for my wife to bring the binoculars. Within 10 seconds, the ball of fire had visually engulfed the whole north side, the whole upper north side of the tower.
We're looking now at pictures of that tower, and as Brian Lutz, the eyewitness, explains here, Brian, if you'll just stay with me for a second,
yes.
There's a great deal of smoke billowing from the tower still. We can see flame coming out from at least two sides of the building. Can't see around to the other side. Brian, were you able to tell us the size of the airplane? Was it a small plane, a commercial plane? Do you have any idea at all?
I will tell you from the size of the gash that the wingtip had to be at least 150 to 200 feet wide. Oh, my God!
Oh,
the next building
there's another one.
Up. Oh, my God! Oh, my God!
Another plane just flew in.
I feel the heat! The explosion is incredible! Oh, my God!
Another plane, as we were watching.
I don't believe this! The second tower has exploded from about the 20 stories below in a gargantuan explosion. Oh, my God, I don't believe it.
Brian Lutz there on the scene as we were talking. You just heard it.
I was looking at it. The side, the northeast corner has exploded in the most incredible explosion. Flames are flying out of the building. They're 5, 10 stories high now. Black billowing smoke. The building corner, the whole entire corner is gone. It's missing.
Brian, I don't know if you could see from your vantage point, we could see that there was actually a second plane which flew into that second tower.
I was looking at the tower itself, and nothing. It exploded from the inside out. It's on 1, 2, 3. It's on 5 floors. It's 2 separate fires now. One exactly on the corner of the northeast side, and the second one about 5 stories below it, exactly in the middle of the building.
Well,
oh, my God.
Both buildings are now burning at the upper levels. A great deal of smoke now. As we say, as Brian was describing the scene from that first explosion in the first building, we actually saw a second airplane smash into the second World Trade Center building. We could see it from our vantage point.
There's a scaffolding hanging right now. I see it. It's just swinging against the building. I have very high-powered binoculars right now. I did not see anything fly into the building. I did not see anything. I am looking directly at both twin towers. I can see 50% of the upper stories of both twin towers. The heat was so immense. I felt it here, and we are about 8, 9 blocks from the North Tower and about an additional 400 feet or 300 feet to the South Tower. Both explosions are on the north side of the towers.
We are looking at videotape replays now from our studio here, Brian, and we can actually see an airplane, looks like a twin-engine airplane, which approaches the second tower. And I'm trying to get my bearings. It appears that it approached the second tower from a westerly direction and actually smashed into the far side of the building, and flame came billowing out of the east side of the building. And now we have both twin towers on fire, a tremendous ball of fire, a huge explosion in the upper levels of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan in downtown New York. No indication how it is that two airplanes could smash into this tallest landmark around. The World Trade Centers, of course, are a landmark in New York City that can be seen even on a cloudy day, can be seen from miles and miles around. Brian, can you tell us what's happening where you are right now?
Flames are billowing from the south, from the north side of the South Tower, and I see the corner is a mass of flames, at least 1, 2, 3, 4 stories. Then there's no smoke or flame for about 100 feet, and then there's a second 2 or 3 story high by about 75 feet wall of flames crawling up the side of the towers.
Brian, let me interrupt you just for a second, and let's go now. We have Jerry Hauer.
Very noisy here. You have to speak up.
Okay, stand by, Brian. We have Jerry Hauer on the line. Jerry Hauer, a terrorism expert formerly with the city of New York. Jerry, are you with us?
I sure am.
What are the odds that two airplanes are crashing into the World Trade Center and this simply be an incredible accident, or is this a terrorism attack?
Well, I think it's at this point in time, it's hard to tell what's going on. We really have to evaluate what happened. If there are two planes, it certainly is of concern. I think that we really need to understand what happened before we jump to any conclusions.
Jerry, are you aware of any threats, any recent threats that have been made? Of course, we're hearing about threats all the time, but anything specifically referring to the World Trade Center or to New York City?
No, there have been no specific threats that I know of. We are in an environment right now where things are extremely tense around the world, but there have been no specific threats that I know of against the Trade Center or against New York City.
Just to recap, I have Jerry Hauer on the line, a terrorism expert. 2 airplanes have crashed into both twin towers of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan. One of the planes smashing into the second tower, even as TV cameras and radio and this network were covering this explosion. A tremendous ball of flame, and now huge clouds of dark smoke coming from both towers. And now we have, Jerry, if you'll just stand by with me, we have another eyewitness on the line who saw what happened. Could you go ahead, please? Brian, are you still with me?
I'm still here. I'm just watching it now. The South Tower is totally in blaze on the south side of on the northeast corner with the 2 things. The flames have subsided substantially on the north side of the North Tower. There's a monstrous hole. There's a gigantic 45-degree angled gash. I can see with my binoculars certainly what looks like mechanical equipment in the center of the explosion. It looks like a large tail section, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't want to presuppose something. My hands are actually shaking, so it's hard to hold these binoculars exactly steadily. The heat of the second was so immense that we felt it come right through our windows, and luckily I knew to open up the windows to allow any blast to pass through, because the window most definitely, in my opinion, might have blown in to our upper floor here. I can see now that there's fire and smoke coming from the north side of the building, and now I see tremendous smoke billowing out of the east side of the building, and this would be the explosion that just occurred.
Okay.
We're hearing people screaming, "Get off the streets, get off the streets." There's tremendous crowds here. The activity, people are screaming now, "Get out of the streets, get out of the streets." I don't know who is screaming, but panic could almost ensue rapidly if this escalates, or if I can't believe I saw it happen. I did not see a plane.
Brian, do you see any casualties, any people being brought out of the building? Are you that close at all?
I can't see anything below, say,
You're listening to live coverage from ABC News on a major story at this hour, a fire in both towers of the World Trade Center. We have an eyewitness, Richard Bay, our own Richard Bay, talk show host. He's there at the scene. Richard, are you with us?
Hi, yeah, I'm on the air. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. What happened?
Well,
what did you see?
I didn't see the first explosion, but I saw a plane. I can see it from my window. I live on the 38th floor on 57th Street. I got a straight view to to the World Trade Towers. And I'm looking out the window when it first happened. I woke up and turned on the radio. I went to the window. There were billows of flame coming out. But then I'm sitting here with my girlfriend, and I said, look, there's another plane flying right by it. The next thing you know, she screams, and there's an explosion in the second tower.
Richard, how big of this, John Gambling, how big a plane was that?
It looked, as I'm saying, I'm on 57th Street. This is all the way downtown. It looked like a small plane to me from where I was. In fact, what my first reaction to it was, it looked like it would be maybe a news photographer who got up there to try to get close and take pictures. But it was so close. I said, my God, why is that guy flying so close?
Richard, did it look to you as though the wings sort of grazed it, or did it look like a head-on collision, or couldn't you tell?
What happened was it flew around one side. It disappeared for a moment behind the building, and the next thing I saw was a giant explosion of flames.
So, Richard, it was clearly a plane, a smaller plane, and not a helicopter that news sources would generally use in that kind of situation.
I'll tell you this, it was, 10 minutes ago? It looked like a plane to me, and it looked like a small passenger plane.
Yeah, it looked, we were able to see some news coverage because they were actually, ABC Network was actually showing the building while they were doing the coverage, and you could actually see a portion of that plane making impact. That was at about 9:03 this morning, following the first plane crash,
which must have been about 8:40.
About 8:40. Right. Now both towers are on fire. Both towers are smoke billowing out, and both towers have sustained hits from airplanes.
It seems to me from the pictures that I'm looking at right now that the first plane hit at approximately the 80th floor of the first tower, and the second plane is below that, probably in the 65 floor range.
The second plane was lower. But in the explosion, I'll tell you this, I saw the explosion replayed on TV. The explosion from where I'm watching it was gigantic. The explosion looked like it might have, gone 15 floors from where I'm watching it from my apartment.
We have reporters. George Weber is on his way down to the scene, and I have talked with my sister, Ann Hoffman, who works at One Liberty Plaza, and I talked with her just a few minutes ago, right after the first explosion. She was scared, to say the least. They were evacuating the building, and we'll be trying to get in touch with her, but she said the explosion was absolutely intense.
And it was a big ball of orange flame that burst out from the side of the tower that's most to the east.
Well, now, Richard, from your vantage point in the towers, you have a good bird's eye view. Do you see any other aircraft in the area, particularly that might actually be defensive in nature, to prevent possibly any other further crashes into the World Trade Center?
From my vantage point, there is not one other aircraft in the air. Earlier, I did see a helicopter off at some distance, but right at this moment, and I can only see, I can't see the whole tower all the way around, right at this moment because of the smoke. But I doubt that there's an aircraft flying in that smoke either.
Mm-hmm. Well, I certainly think, guys, that you can't go too far without jumping to the conclusion that these impacts were intentional.
Well, it certainly seems unlikely that two separate planes, 20 minutes apart, would each crash accidentally into a different tower.
I would agree with you.
Of the Trade Center. But the fact is, we don't know, and you can have one accident. You can't have a plane coming too close, trying to get a shot, or just veering down to say, oh, let's take a look at this, and crashing again. So I don't think people should jump to conclusions.
But that second plane was a big plane.
It was a big plane.
It didn't look like somebody, it didn't look like a little guy flying around to just get a peek at it.
It didn't.
And now, I want to point out, this is Phil Boyce in the newsroom, and of course, getting official information right now is difficult, but we understand in the newsroom that New York City is under a terrorist alert, that the federal buildings in the city are being shut down because the city officials are afraid that there could be another attack. Obviously, there was one and then a second one if it's a terrorist attack, and so they're concerned about that. They're also concerned about attacks on the mass transit system, anything where there's a lot of people. So right now, if those of you who are trying to get into the city by train, don't be surprised if those trains stop.
So I could take the day off, actually, and I'm not a big fan of U.S. military power, but it would be nice to see a aircraft, a military jet or so, sort of flying perimeter around here. And
absolutely,
probably
you would expect to see that at any moment. You'd expect to see U.S. military flying around the World Trade, and also perhaps the Empire State Building or any other monument that we have.
Well, in fact, the only times we've ever had airline crashes or planes crashing into buildings here before in New York, because obviously they're very high buildings and planes are constantly flying overhead, is in times of fog. But today is...
Clear day, blue sky. That's not what this
couldn't be clear, even if navigation systems failed.
Not an accident.
Let me just add, we've just gotten this information just into the newsroom that the Lincoln and Holland tunnels at this point are both completely shut down, and FBI is investigating the possible plane hijacking as well into the area.
Okay, but the Lincoln and Holland tunnels are shut down as a precautionary
as a precaution
measure,
right now.
Not because anything has happened in the Lincoln and Holland tunnels.
You know, the point you make, Ron, is interesting because as we watch the pictures here and do the best we can to bring you this tragedy, and if you are just tuning in, each tower of the World Trade Center has been impacted by a significantly large airplane. They are both on fire at the moment. But as you point out, Ron, there are no police helicopters. There are circling the World Trade Center at the moment, and I find that most unusual. But as you say, the contingencies for this sort of thing have been in place for years, and I'm sure they're being mobilized as well.
Yeah, I mean, can't we use some of these police, these military gunships or something?
Well, yeah, you would expect to see
a little
that.
perimeter. I'm not suggesting
if you notice, just from the places where the airplanes crashed in, the unbelievable situation for those workers who are above the 80th floors, because the last time we had a blast, which was below in the parking lot of B2, there was a 1,500-pound explosion that knocked out all the electricity, knocked out the elevators, made it almost impossible to escape that situation. Luckily, most did. But this is even more devastating to those who might potentially be trapped above.
I should point out, WABC is in continuous coverage of this attack, and at 20 after, we will go to ABC News, which is using its full resources to cover this. So we will continue in coverage as long as necessary right here on WABC.
Well, gentlemen, let me just add that all three area airports have now also, as a precaution, been shut down.
Now, you know also, Phil Boyce and John Gambling, John, this is your show, and we're continuing the drive time in this area, giving the updates. But our emergency bunker, so to speak, where the entire emergency protective apparatus of the city of New York is housed,
in the World
Trade Center.
Do you know what floor that's on? Isn't that about 30?
I believe so.
It is on one of the lower floors, I think you're
Which
right.
always, we wondered at the time, we thought that was not such a brilliant idea.
You think you'd put it underground?
Attack the Trade Center. No, it's not underground.
You would think that they would
you would think they'd put it underground somewhere. But
right,
no,
but that's where all of the emergency apparatus is sort of piloted from. Now, there is a backup facility at One Police Plaza. They have all of the latest technology, the TV cameras, and the ability to assign emergency patrols and also service units. But basically, the city's lifeline is right there at the World Trade Center, and hopefully everyone is fine in that bunker system and able to follow through on the badly needed duties. We're going to be getting our national news update. Our ABC radio news correspondents are all at the scene, and collectively we'll try to put together all of the missing question marks that still exist as we watch the two World Trade Centers burn there at the top upper levels. So to our ABC Radio National News Desk for an update.
World Trade Center. The latest update from WABC Radio News.
Two planes have now crashed into New York's World Trade Center, one after the other, hitting both towers. This eyewitness was talking with ABC's Jim Hickey when...
Gargantuan explosion! Oh, my God, I don't believe it!
Brian Lutz there on the scene as we were talking. You just heard it.
I was looking at it. The side, the northeast corner has exploded in the most incredible explosion. Flames are flying out of the building. They're 5, 10 stories high now. Black billowing smoke. The building corner, the whole entire corner is gone. It's missing.
Gaping holes on the upper stories of the New York landmark. No immediate word of injuries or fatalities. The twin disasters, which happened just before and after 9 this morning, The towers were struck by bombers 8 years ago, and the Pentagon says it had no advance warning of this attack. However, the FBI is investigating reports of a plane hijacked before the crashes. Joan Bennett, ABC News.
Point, they believe there was no warning.
Thank you.
You're listening to live coverage from ABC News. Two planes have crashed into the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan in New York. I'm Jim Hickey. You were just listening to a conversation between ABC's Peter Jennings and National Security Correspondent John McWethy. And as Peter reported, the Associated Press is now reporting that officials say the FBI is investigating reports of a plane hijacking just before the crashes, just before the two planes crashed into the World Trade Center. No indication of if there indeed was a hijacking, or if there was, where it came from and where the hijacking took place. We'll correct something we said a little while ago, that there had been a bombing at the World Trade Center in 1993. That is indeed true. It was not by a plane, however. It was the bombing in the basement in the parking garage of the World Trade Center in 1993 that killed 6 people and injured many others. We still have Brian Lutz with us on the line, who's in Lower Manhattan, where there's a great deal of confusion. Brian heard and saw the explosions and was talking to us when the second plane smashed into the second tower. Brian, can you give us an update of what's happening there right now?
It's hard to hear you. There's obviously mass confusion. Flames have now started to erupt from the North Tower, both below and to the right of the diagonal gash, and above and to the left of the lower diagonal gash. They're coming out of both sides of the building now. The smoke is incredibly intense, incredibly black. I can see that the South Tower, the fire has definitely picked up some strength, and debris is just falling off the building. I mean, it's unbelievably scary to see these chunks. I mean, if I see a chunk that size, you must imagine it's 3 or 4 feet long. It's twirling like helicopter blades. I just heard another explosion. It may very well have been something inside. The second explosion was so loud and so forceful that we felt the heat come through our windows, which is we are about 7 blocks north, and our upper floor faces the Twin Towers exactly. I can see the South Tower. I can see about 70 floors, the upper 70 floors, and the North Tower I see about the upper 40 floors. The gash in the tower is about 45-degree angle, and it's got to be 250 to 250 feet at about a 40-degree angle. And I can see with my binoculars, people are screaming, get out of the streets below me. There's tremendous confusion. I can see a huge chunk of airplane that's about, appears to be maybe 10 feet in from the skin of the tower. The flames are spreading rapidly on the north side of the East Tower. Do you have any questions? I mean, I feel like I'm just talking.
No, you're doing just fine, Brian. Brian Lutz is an eyewitness in Lower Manhattan who saw both explosions of the World Trade Centers, and what Brian is telling us, the facts as he knows them, as he witnessed them. There's a great deal we don't know.
Terrorism at the World Trade Center. The latest update from WABC Radio News.
Good morning, this is Babita Hariani, and of course, as you've been listening, we've been following this major story of 2 planes that have crashed into both towers of the World Trade Center. WABC's George Weber is there live at the scene. He joins us now. George, what can you tell us?
Babita, I'm just several blocks from this right now, and I've never quite seen a scene like it as hundreds of people come streaming from the area of the World Trade Center down here, many of them sobbing, many of them trying to rush to payphones, very much like I had to do because cell service down here is almost non-existent. I'm looking up at the 2 towers right now as that smoke continues to billow out of both, flames coming from about 3/4 of the way up, debris falling, flaming debris, you can see it falling. Some eyewitnesses I talked to here who actually were here earlier and watched this said that one guy said he heard an explosion, and he looked up and he sees the flames coming out of one of the towers, and then next thing you know, he sees a plane, a large plane like a jetliner, crashing into the other tower, which now appears to be 2 airline planes that have gone into these buildings. And one after another, ambulances are rushing back and forth. Bomb squad units coming back and forth. A lot of people shaking their heads and wondering, is this just a sheer accident or is it something more sinister? So certainly very early into all of this right now, and I'll try to keep you posted as best I can from my vantage point here as to what's going on in lower downtown at the World Trade Center. But
George, this is Phil Boyce. I don't think too many people are asking that question anymore. I think just about everybody is assured that this must be a terrorist attack.
Well, everybody except
Ron
Kuby, who's still saying it seems unlikely, but let's not assume the worst until we have some proof. The only thing we're doing is speculating based on the inherent unlikelihood of two planes crashing into two World Trade Center towers within 15 minutes apart. And I agree
you
with
have to agree, Ron, is like 99.9% unlikely.
It doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good. And we should point out, do not try to come on to the island of Manhattan. The island is virtually shut down.
That's right. The Lincoln and Holland tunnels closed. The airports are shut down. And we just got a report moments ago that the FBI is now saying that it is not a terrorist attack and wants to get the word out it was not a terrorist attack. So the FBI has just come through with that
was it an attack by nice people, or was it not an attack at all?
Do they know what the FBI is basing that on?
FBI just basically released that statement alone. I just got from the newsroom.
Right.
It's hard to imagine they would know at this point because it's just been several minutes, but the FBI is just releasing that word now.
See that,
Phil?
I think even Ron doubts that point.
And if I can interrupt here for just a second, from down in front of the World Trade Center, even though there are a number of people here who haven't heard news reports, so they haven't heard the analysis that you're making or the theory that's coming out of others. These are just people who were down here who say they witnessed part of this, and the first thing off the top of their head was, come on, I mean, how likely is it that this could happen? The two jetliners, at least the size of jetliners, could crash into each individual tower of the World Trade Center.
All right, if you remember also, back in 1993, the original World Trade Center blast, that done by the van that was parked in the parking lot, most of the major news outlets actually broadcast off the tower of the World Trade Center. They were all knocked out except for Channel 2. Ever since then, realizing that might happen again in their plans, they also have facilities on the Empire State Building so they can continue their broadcast.
People are curious why the bridges and tunnels are shut down. I just want to point out, back in 1995, when there was the second son of World Trade Center bombing plot, those individuals who were also Islamists, some of whom I ended up representing, in fact, planned to blow up simultaneously the Lincoln Tunnel, the Holland Tunnel, as well as the George Washington Bridge and the United Nations. Now, that attack never got anywhere.
Simultaneously?
Yeah, that was the idea. It never got very far.
Well, it sounds like this is the plan B.
It doesn't look
Doesn't it? Well, why don't we go and take a quick look at traffic? Debbie Duhame is I'm sure traffic has got to be a mess. Debbie, are you there?
Yes, I am. Traffic is a nightmare. All of the bridges and tunnels getting into the city are being shut down right now. Lincoln, Holland, George, shut. Forget about it. Turn around, go back home. 59th Street Bridge being closed. Queens Midtown Tunnel, Brooklyn Bridge, Williamsburg, Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. Again, the Manhattan Bridge. Everything being closed heading into the city. And, of course, you want to avoid the area of the Twin Towers right now. You have tons of emergency vehicles there. And also all the area airports are closed. Newark, Kennedy, LaGuardia, all the major airports are shut down right now. So, again, avoid this area of the city. It is a nightmare. Back over to you in the studio.
If we can,
we are going to a news update is that 30:30? So we've got 45 seconds.
All right, and in fact, we have on the line one of the commissioners of the city of New York.
Here's the president now in Florida. I wonder if everybody knows there what's going on. We'll listen to him.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a difficult moment for America. I unfortunately will be going back to Washington after my remarks. Secretary of Rod Pace and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
All right, we're back in the
Yes,
WABC newsroom, and we have someone joining us.
9:31, one of the commissioners of the city of New York, Jerry Camerata, who's down near the scene. Thanks for joining us, Jerry.
Very well.
Now, Jerry, can you tell us, we know that emergency services is directed from some part of the World Trade Center,
Well,
facility.
actually, we're in the building adjacent to the Twin Towers. That is now being evacuated, so this phone call will be cut short. All of the public buildings, as you've heard probably on your news, all of our rails and all of our bridges have been closed. The debris is blocks from the World Trade Center as it exists right now. Literally, as we're speaking, people are either jumping out of the building from 60, 70, 80, 90 floors up, or are just simply falling out of the windows. One of the most horrific things we've ever seen in all of our lives. The panic, particularly with our kids in the local schools down here, has been on. Phones have to be dropped. I have to get out right now. I'm sorry. Talk to you later.
All right, Commissioner. That was Commissioner Jerry Camerata, Youth Services Commissioner, but one who's always involved whenever an emergency situation takes place.
And obviously, Curtis, this emphasizes the horrendous personal toll that this must be taking or has taken on those buildings, that people that were trapped in those two buildings. We have no idea how many injuries, but I'm sure it could easily be hundreds. And right now, people still trying to get out of the World Trade Center. And as Jerry just told us from right next door, people actually jumping out of the World Trade Center. It must be a horrific sight.
And Phil, we've also gotten unconfirmed reports, unconfirmed at this point from the newsroom, that as many as 50, perhaps even more, were on board one of the planes that crashed. So
that means, if that's true, now again, we emphasize we don't know about a lot of these things that are coming into the newsroom, but that indicates a possibility of a hijacking.
Right. The FBI had said that they were investigating possibly investigating a hijacking just before the crash occurred. So that may be, part of the story there.
And it looked to me, watching the video of the second plane, it looked to me that was a 737, or at least a comparable size to a 737 aircraft.
Well, absolutely. It was certainly not a Cessna 172 or 182.
And it was moving at least 300 miles an hour when it hit the building.
Now, you would have to believe, with all of the television helicopter live shots, that somebody might have gotten a shot at that thing so we could identify it, because we don't know if that was an airliner. We don't know right now. All we saw were a distant shot of it hitting the second tower. So if it was an airliner, you'd think that somebody would have noticed it, and we'd be getting those reports.
And it would have been on a flight plan. I mean, we would know at least what airliners were scheduled to be landing and taking off and in that flight area, and which ones didn't make it. So we should have some notion fairly soon as to what this plane, who was on at least the second plane, the one that we saw at 903.
It's so serious, as you heard Commissioner Jerry Camerata. They're abandoning the emergency service bunker there that has been set up exactly for these kinds of emergencies because of the danger that may come their way and to others who are in nearby buildings surrounding the World Trade Center.
Gentlemen, we just got a report to unidentified sources as well, saying that an American Airlines 767 from Boston that was coming in from Boston was the plane. But again, they're unidentified sources. The second plane, that is the second plane that came in and slammed into one of the towers. So we will find out more. We're finding out, every few minutes what is more
you're
details.
just identifying the possible nature of the plane, but not necessarily that it had been hijacked.
No, not sure. If the FBI was just saying that they were investigating a possible hijacking. We just got an unconfirmed report that it was an American Airlines 767. That was the second plane that crashed.
Airliners do not fly into the World Trade Center. I mean, it's just unless they are directed that way by its pilot. Right. Obviously, this is not something that's accidental. I think it's interesting, too, that Manhattan Island, as you pointed out, Phil Boyce, is completely locked down.
We're locked down. Both those of us who are on Manhattan can't get off, and those of us who are not on this island cannot get on, and for good reason, as they've shut down virtually every major transit route into or off of the island.
And the impact, beyond obviously the human tragedy that is taking place as we speak in both towers of the World Trade Center, the impact of this globally is incomprehensible. when you think about the financial markets and all of the other things that swirl around New York and America, this is literally incomprehensible in scope.
The very reason we saw the president address the nation and seem to contradict the FBI, because I don't know about you gentlemen and Bobita, but my impression was the president has pretty much determined this is an act of terrorism.
But again, this is also President G.W. Bush, so let's not jump to any conclusions either. Let's just wait a little longer for some facts to come in.
Is it okay if a few of us start to assume this is a terrorist attack?
You can assume it. I just don't think that based on G.W. Bush talking about
He is the president of the United States,
I know that,
Ron.
but he's not often the most well-informed guy around, Phil.
Well, but right now, you would think he would be locked into the information pipeline.
And you would even hope. I'm just not assuming.
But, Ron, I think it's fair to say that people in the Middle East who have declared America to be the big Satan
not only are we
and
calling
Israel
it
the little
terrorism,
Satan.
now we're already pointing fingers.
Well,
okay.
Excuse me, Ron, who has targeted the World Trade Center before? And you even explained why they targeted it.
I remember when the Murrah building went up, and for a day and a half, everybody was talking about, yes, the terrorist cells right there in Oklahoma. It's a hotbed of Middle Eastern Arab activity. No doubt these were Arab terrorists who blew up the Murrah building. It turned out to be blonde-haired, blue-eyed, corn-fed, flag-waving country boys.
Can we talk probabilities, though? Is it more likely that this might have something to do with the Middle East than it does with the Michigan militia? Wouldn't it be more likely?
That would have been the case in the Murrah Federal Building, too. It absolutely would have been much more likely that it was Arab terrorists who blew up the Federal Building
and that's why people assumed it.
Than it was, in fact, a bunch of neo-Nazi white people. But hey,
as you know, in radical Muslim literature, they refer to New York City as sort of the Jewish capital of the world. Even larger in scope than Tel Aviv, the real capital in Israel.
Certainly the Twin Towers were specific targets of the original bombing, and I know those folks who were convicted of it, and they specifically talked about the importance of hitting the Trade Center as a target of American corporate wealth and power.
All right, before we go anywhere, before we get our national update, back to Commissioner Jerry Camerata, who's found another line to speak to us. Jerry, any updates?
Yeah, sorry for the delay. They've just evacuated us from the building adjacent to the World Trade Center. There's a suspect of possibly another plane in the air. So now all emergency services are being evacuated out of the building where everybody could be very susceptible here. Again, the debris is absolutely all over for blocks. All city agencies are done, but more importantly, the public schools that are down here. Parents that were here, eyewitness with many of the children seeing the explosion, have now taken those kids home. We have security in those schools. The schools are being used for whatever purpose is necessary as a shelter area. Truly, the amount of tears and the amount of despair in the eyes of the people today out on the street is just something to behold. Once again, as we saw with the last World Trade Center, people come together, helping each other,
now,
trying to make a move away from the area.
From the pictures
Curtis,
see,
a little louder, please.
From the pictures we see, we don't see any aircraft in the area like NYPD helicopters or any other possible military aircraft to protect any further attacks. Do you know if anything is airborne to protect the building from further attacks?
I don't know, but I know the President of the United States gave a message just a little while ago. I was not privy to what he said. I'm assuming that kind of alert has been done. Right now, I just think they're trying to keep everything as far away from this building as possible. They don't know what the potential explosive possibilities may be.
Jerry Camerata, if you can stay in touch with us, because we have a status report coming up from our national ABC radio news desk about further developments in this horrible plane crashes into both towers of the World Trade Center.
Terrorism at the World Trade Center. The latest update from WABC Radio News.
Disaster in New York City. 2 planes, minutes apart, have crashed into the upper floors of each tower of the World Trade Center. Both towers engulfed in flames. It appears to be a terrorist attack. That from President Bush.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a difficult moment for America. I, unfortunately, will be going back to Washington after my remarks. Secretary Broad Pace and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at the Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act.
President Bush, while everything is preliminary, a source tells the Associated Press the reports that the planes were hijacked are being investigated. Hijacked and purposely flown into both towers of the World Trade Center. We're live with ABC's Tim Sheld. Tim is literally stuck on the George Washington Bridge. Tim, are you with us?
Larry, yes. New York City has virtually been shut down as a result of this chaos today. Remember, Larry, tens of thousands of people work in the World Trade Center complex. Imagine the chaos there. But the city has literally shut down avenues to get in, like the George Washington Bridge that I can see closed in front of me. The Lincoln and Holland tunnels closed as well. The scope of the tragedy not even near in our view yet.
ABC's Tim Sheld with us live. Again, 2 planes crashed, apparently deliberately, an apparent terrorist attack, according to President Bush, into the Twin Towers, into the World Trade Center in New York City. I'm Larry Jacobs, ABC News.
This is continuous coverage of the attack on the World Trade Center. From WABC Radio News, this is WABC New York.
Good morning. This is Babita Hariani from the WABC newsroom, and as you've been hearing all morning long for the last hour and a half or so, hour and 40 minutes, we have reports that 2 planes crashed into both towers of the World Trade Center. One about 8:40, that was in the North Tower. Then just after 9 o'clock in the morning, another plane, possibly a 767, an American Airlines jet, is the reports that we're getting at this moment. You heard the president a couple minutes ago saying it was indeed a terrorist attack. The FBI had earlier reported that it was investigating a possible hijacking, that planes crashed. Bellevue Hospital, we're told now, is now the command center for all injuries for anybody that needs to find out about family or loved ones. Reports we have that people are jumping or just falling out of the windows as they try to evacuate the buildings. We're also told the airports are closed, the tunnels are shut down, the bridge shut down, and there is debris all over several blocks there. We're going to go live back to ABC News coverage now in Washington on yet another update.
Rising from behind the old executive office building. We have people on their way there now, but it's like nothing I've ever seen. I mean,
we're looking at a fire that's on television right now. There is a fire in Washington, D.C. as well.
I must also tell you, Claire, I think if you think about what's behind the EOB there, you're really down in pretty open area. It doesn't look like a place where a building would be on fire.
No, that's right, although there are a number of buildings just behind the old executive office building on G Street that could potentially be on fire, but nothing you would necessarily think of as a target. Apparently, we're also...
Claire, let me interrupt you for a second. We now have fire confirmed at the Pentagon. John McCarthy at the Pentagon can hear me. John, please get in touch immediately if you can and brief us in there. John McCarthy has actually been evacuated from the Pentagon, and parts of the Pentagon are indeed being evacuated. We want to hold our breath here, it just seems to me, for a second, and not get into a mode that the country is under attack. But we now have 2 attacks on the Twin Trade Tower Center. U.S. buildings, city buildings completely evacuated in New York City. We have this mysterious black smoke at the southwest corner of the White House, which is to say there's something going on behind the old executive office building. We now have a report that fire has been confirmed at the Pentagon. ABC's John McCarthy, our Pentagon correspondent, who's been plugging in as quickly to the intelligence and counterintelligence units there this morning, has been temporarily evacuated. But that is as much as we know for sure.
Well, you're listening to live coverage from ABC News. That's Peter Jennings on our ABC television station. And we've had several different things happen in the last couple of minutes. Let me try as best as I can to update you. We have a report that the White House is being completely evacuated at the moment. The Pentagon, that there is a fire at the Pentagon. And, of course, right here in New York, just ongoing at this point, both towers of the World Trade Center hit in 2 separate plane crashes. And we are just at the point where people are being evacuated. Lots of emergency crews on the scene trying to help people there.
And, Babita, we are getting some reports now that this fire at the Pentagon may have been caused by a 3rd plane. And, of course, that makes some sense because the Pentagon is a fortress, and it would be very difficult to get any kind of a terrorist attack in there. So the possibility exists of a third terrorist attack now on the Pentagon, and, of course, that explains why they would be evacuating the White House.
Right.
You remember a few years ago, some nut job tried to land a plane or crash a plane into the White House, and that failed. But this did not fail, of course, if it was intended to land at the Pentagon.
And we had a couple of minutes ago, there's some reports that yet a third plane was sighted here in the New York City area, but we are waiting to hear.
Simply a third plane in the area without any indication that it posed any threat. Well, all the airports in the metropolitan area, they're all closed.
Well, it's interesting. The FBI had said, put out a statement a short while ago that this was not a terrorist attack. Then we heard the president a few moments ago saying,
apparent. No, he said apparently.
Apparent terrorist attack.
If you look at the proximity of National Airport, Ronald Reagan Airport, the airport I flew into last night, you actually pass over the Pentagon. It's one of the few buildings that you pass over right before you hit the landing strip. So if, in fact, a plane were taken, hijacked possibly from that airport, the possibility is that it would have been a very short distance between takeoff to actual crash site, if, in fact, that's what
I would have to ask our resident skeptic right here who's been cautioning. Ron Kuby, what do you think?
Assuming that, indeed, it was a third plane in the Pentagon, which I agree would almost have to be given what it is, the likelihood of 3 separate planes within an hour hitting 3 separate targets, the symbol of American military power as well as the symbol of American corporate wealth, simultaneously by accident strikes even me.
So now that we've had, Ron, not
so
one,
I will
two,
join.
now,
I will join the apparent terrorist attack crowd here.
What it appears to be 3 airplanes have crashed into American facilities, 2 in the World Trade Center, now perhaps 1 into the Pentagon. We have to be alert. There could be another one.
Oh, exactly.
Right, and we also have a mysterious fire in one corner of the White House that we're getting reports of.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we stay out of big, crowded public buildings today? Why don't we stay out of trying to come to New York City? Don't try to come into New York City. You're not going to get in. Don't try to leave New York City because you're not going to get out. Those of you who are at home, stay there and listen to us.
It would be interesting to know right at the moment what the status of our American military forces are around the world, because usually these sort of things, and we are now seeing on the television a picture of Air Force One, which... that's got to make you a little nervous to think about that. But the status.
Old George bailing out.
Well, no,
I'd like to see a few fighter planes myself.
they go to the command. They go to the command mode where they move the executive offices to Air Force One.
So you think there's a possibility that the president might be getting airborne?
I'm looking at pictures of Air Force One with people standing around it and people checking it and looking as though
you're absolutely right, John.
Getting ready.
I think they're getting ready to put the president on Air Force One.
And that plane can stay airborne virtually forever with refueling. I mean, this is a very, very scary situation.
We're 1 minute away from an ABC status report, and let me point out we're now joined by our sister station, 1050 ESPN. We're now in simulcast coverage of this tragic event, terrorist attack, both on Manhattan, also perhaps on the Pentagon, and, of course, on the United States of America. We still do not know, Babita, how many people might have been injured in that World Trade Center attack about an hour ago.
Well, in fact, the president may be heading back to a safer location in the capital area because he's in Sarasota, Florida now. That's maybe why they're preparing Air Force One. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll continue our round-the-clock coverage. We will not abandon this story as news breaks every few seconds. That's why we're going to our ABC National Radio News Desk for an update.
Terrorism at the World Trade Center. The latest update from WABC Radio News.
The FAA has grounded all air takeoffs nationwide this morning after what can only be described as a series of mind-boggling events have taken place. The first one this morning at the World Trade Center.
Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
President Bush making the comments before heading back to the White House. Brian Lutz works in New York City near the Trade Center. He saw it as it happened.
Smoke is continuing to billow. It's getting black and blacker. Oh, my God. I don't believe it. It's spreading so fast. Debris is falling off the building as I speak. Black smoke is pouring out of the building. stuff. The building is completely falling off the side of pieces of the building are falling off the side of the building.
We're also getting word that the Pentagon and the Treasury Departments have been evacuated. I'm Daria Albinger, ABC News.
This is continuous coverage of the attack on the World Trade Center from WABC Radio News. This is WABC New York.
And we are joined by our sister station, 1050 ESPN. We're in simulcast continuous coverage. We have Babita Hariani of the News Center. We have Curtis Sliwa. We have Ron Kuby. I don't think I've ever called you Sliwa before, excuse me. And John Gambling. We're now getting a report from NBC that all air travel in the country has been stopped. All airports have been shut down, and those planes that are in the air, obviously, are going to have to land somewhere.
Right. In fact, my mother's flying in this morning from London, so I'm wondering, in that case, what happens? They just land him in another country and keep him aside?
Babita, let's go to our newsmaker telephone right now, because on it is Director Robert Heibel, a retired FBI agent who served as the Bureau's Deputy Chief of Counterterrorism. Bob, what do you make of this situation?
To me, it's not unexpected, and we just saw a plane fly into it on TV.
Fly into what?
Well, we're looking at a rerun here.
Of what?
I'm not surprised personally by what's happened. It's just been a matter of wondering when it was going to happen. And actually, when Oklahoma City took place, looking at those scenes, it looked like Lebanon did in the 80s.
Robert, we just saw a picture of Air Force One. Do you believe in this situation the president and his staff will be moved to the airplane?
That's a Secret Service decision. I can't tell you what their emergency plans would be, but in view of what's happened at the Pentagon in Washington, I think they're going to keep them away from Washington personally.
Well, and all air travel ceasing for at least 7 hours, right. That's unheard of.
Certainly unheard of, but not, I think, an unwise move, because what you've got, of course, is the hijacking of the American Airlines flight from Boston to Washington. So it's logical that they may do, something else may happen.
That's new information. We had not reported that.
Which?
Had we? The hijacking of the American Airlines from Boston to Washington?
We had, it was speculated, okay. It was rumored that had taken place.
I think that's been confirmed now. The question is, where did the other plane come from, the second plane come from?
And you've also heard, Robert, that there's speculation that a plane has crashed into the Pentagon as well.
Well, yes, or else a helicopter landed on the pad and they exploded it. And I'm sure the Pentagon, has taken all kinds of measures to stop trucks and cars and so on and so forth.
When you were Deputy Chief of Counterterrorism with the FBI, this scenario of planes into the World Trade Center, was that discussed? Was that rumored? Had you heard from your sources that this was a possibility?
You have to remember, I was in that job 15 years ago, and what's happened is the whole terrorist picture has changed. So today, the leftists that were so active in those days are gone, and what you're facing now is you're facing the Islamic zealot. And we shouldn't be surprised by what's happened here. Taking a look at the embassy bombings in
well, not surprised,
Kenya,
but of course shocked.
I think we're stunned.
Robert, you don't have, Robert, excuse me, you don't have any indication at this point that an Islamist group was behind this. I mean, because Colin Powell just recently, yesterday, denounced the right-wing paramilitaries in Colombia.
If I might interrupt right now, we just have pictures of Air Force One leaving Andrews Air Force Base. They're up and we don't know who's on board.
We assume the president would be on board, but we don't know that for sure.
Exactly. So, we're talking with Robert Heibel, retired FBI agent who served as the Bureau's Deputy Chief of Counterterrorism. Can you tell us anything more about plans that are in place, that what we might expect? I mean, we are watching and seeing and hearing unprecedented things taking place. New York City is completely locked down. Air travel has been suspended across the entire United States. Think of the numbers of people in aircraft that are being affected by that. What might we else expect this afternoon?
I think probably that a lot of people are just waiting for the other shoes to fall, if there are any.
You mean another attack?
If I were doing this and I were doing synchronized attacks, I would be looking at doing something. I would carry it probably across the country.
Do you believe
whether or not that's going to happen? I don't know.
Robert, do you believe that there might be international troop movements that are going on at this point?
I don't see that.
Okay. Do you think that this is strictly a domestic situation?
I do not think it's strictly a domestic situation. I think it's an international situation. I don't think this is some attack by some loner who was a member of a militia. Who's
obviously couldn't be a loner now because he's got accomplices. But Mr. Heibel, just a quick question for you: is it unusual or odd that there would not have been a rumor or a threat, or usually we get a warning that we're under some kind of a terrorist attack?
This is not some group that's worried about casualties. You hijack a plane and fly a couple hundred people into the side of a building. You're not worried about casualties. And why should they give a warning? They didn't give a warning in Kenya or Tanzania. They didn't give a warning in Saudi Arabia when they bombed the barracks there. All a warning does is gives the opponent a chance to take steps to counter them.
And Mr. Heibel, can you just give me your guess on who would want to do this? Maybe is there like 1, 2, and 3 as far as suspects?
I don't think it takes a genius to be, pick number one suspect, and that's Osama bin Laden and his group Al Qaeda and their followers.
Would there be a number 2 in your mind?
That's them, but that would be my number one on my hit parade.
And would there be a number 2 on your hit parade?
I really don't have a number 2 at this point.
We're getting reports now, ladies and gentlemen, that there was a terrorist. This is a rumor. This has not been confirmed that there was a terrorist attack on the White House prior to what we have seen here in New York.
We did have a report of a fire at the White House, and so who knows what that could have come from.
And just to kind of recap, we believe that Air Force One, we know that Air Force One is taken off from Andrews Air Force Base. There is no word as to where the president and his staff are at the moment. We should not forget that the World Trade Centers, both towers, the North and South towers, are in flames at the moment.
And it does not appear that
there's any sort of rescue
at all.
And now those buildings have been burning. The first plane struck the North Tower at approximately 8:40 this morning. The second plane, it has been said that it's an American Airlines 767 from Boston, flew into the South Tower at 9:03 this morning. And so we are now talking over almost an hour and a half since this attack on the United States has taken place. There has been some sort of an attack on the Pentagon in Washington, and rumors that there has been an attack on the White House as well.
And our New York City Fire Department, which practices regularly in the high-rise buildings for just such accidents, so to speak, when a plane crashes into a building or a terrorist strike, obviously their full experiences are being called into play because the work they're being asked to do is extremely dangerous. When you look at the pictures of the fire that continues to burn at the upper levels of the World Trade Center. I believe, though, originally, a gentleman correct me, but the president was in Sarasota, Florida. That's where he addressed the nation. I don't believe he was in the Capital Land area.
So when that Air Force One took off, where
was it? Not from Andrews. It would have been
from Sarasota, although I stand to be corrected on that.
Heibel, thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Heibel, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
And by the way, this is WAVD New York and WABC 770 in New York. We are simulcasting on our sister station, ESPN 1050. At the top of the hour, we're going to go back to ABC News coverage and continue to report on this tragedy. Again, both New York City and now the whole country impacted by what we now obviously all believe is to be a huge terrorist attack on the United States.
All right, we are going to go in just a few moments to ABC News. Let me just recap for the next few seconds what we know at this point.
And tell us about the traffic situation.
All right.
All right, we're going to go to ABC Audio right now.
And now it looks almost like a mushroom cloud explosion, this huge billowing smoke in the second tower. This was the second of the two towers hit. And I cannot see behind that smoke, obviously, as you can either. The first tower in front has not changed. And we see this extraordinarily and frightening scene behind us of this second tower, now just encased in smoke. What is behind it? I cannot tell you.
And this is a description of smoke that's just pouring.
We now apparently have another attack on the World Trade Center. Or at least another explosion of some kind.
Let's go now to Peter Jennings and the network to listen to the very latest.
Not there anymore.
That should be it.
It has completely collapsed.
The whole side has collapsed?
The whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
That's the southern tower you're talking about.
Exactly. The second building that we witnessed the airplane enter the top half had been fully involved in flame. It just collapsed. There is panic on the streets. Thousands of people running up
Church Street, which is what I'm looking out on, trying to get away. But the entire, at least as far as I can see, the top half of the building, at least half of it, I can't see below that, half of it just started with a gigantic rumble, folded in on itself, and collapsed in a huge plume of smoke and dust.
We're talking about massive casualties here at the moment, and we have... That is extraordinary.
There is panic on the streets. There are people screaming and running from the site. The gigantic plume of smoke has reached me, and I'm probably a quarter of a mile north of there.
Peter. Now this is what it looked like moments ago. My God. Southern.
All right, we're really looking right now at a collapse of one of the World Trade Center towers we're listening to.
Eastern time.
And the building, there must be massive casualties. The building, one of them, I believe it is the North Tower, is it?
I think they said the South Tower.
The South Tower completely collapsed.
If you wish to bring anybody who's ever watched a building being demolished on purpose knows that if you're going to do this, you have to get at the under infrastructure of a building and bring it down.
Peter?
Yes, Dan.
What appeared to happen from my vantage point, the top part of the building was totally involved in fire, and there appeared to be no effort possible to put that fire out. It looked like the top part of the building was so weakened by the fire that the weight of it collapsed the rest of the building. That's what appeared to happen. I did not see anything happening at the base of the building. It all appeared to start at the top and then just collapse the rest of the building by the sheer weight of the top.
And now we also have the 14 Sears towers evacuated as well.
But I did see that the top part of it started to collapse. The walls started to bulge out, bricks, glass things coming out, and then it collapsed in on itself, and it appeared to just fold down from there, from the very top.
Thanks, Don, very much. Just looking at that, I don't know why, but when was the last time the United States was attacked in this fashion? It was Pearl Harbor in 1941.
From the scene now, there's obviously massive casualties. Usually during these things, there's a little bit of a high pitch, but basic calm over the police radios among the emergency workers. I can hear them screaming, signal 1013, which is the police code for help, calling for help at the triage center, where other people who are already injured have been injured more, confirming that the building has collapsed. Dozens of officers, more civilians are injured. And we don't know, although I'd have to suggest, given the size of that building, what progress the evacuation was in of the tower that collapsed.
Yes, Pierre Thomas.
One thing I might add is that in recent years, the U.S. government has been preparing for massive attacks, but it's been primarily focused on biological, often bombing attacks. One of the things I have not heard discussed at all in government circles is the notion that someone would hijack a plane and perhaps fly it into a building. So one of the questions that I'm sure that will come out of this, if this indeed is a terrorist attack, is what kind of defenses did the U.S. have in place to deal with an event like this?
Well, we talked about that even, Pierre, just before you came and joined us, because at the Emergency Management Center, which is just literally in the same complex as the trade towers, they talk at great length about their preparations for a biological, a chemical warfare attack, how they closed tunnels. I mean, they've been very efficient, taken it very seriously for many years. I'd be a little surprised if the notion of an airborne attack on a United States target had not been discussed. But the notion of the intelligence services knowing absolutely nothing of what is going on today and saying openly right away they had no warnings whatsoever is, and you say something very important, if this is a terrorist attack. We just keep saying that on a repeated basis. Not having any notion whatsoever of what's going on is to be reminded not only of the efficiency of terrorism, but just reminded the efficiency of terrorism.
It's ironic. There's a chilling story. Lou Shalero of the FBI, who was part of the capture of Ramzi Youssef, who was the mastermind of the last bombing of the World Trade Center. told me this story, that he was flying over the World Trade Center in a helicopter with the suspect, Ramzi Yousef, next to him after he was captured in Pakistan. And as they passed over, Lou Shalero nudged him and said to Ramzi Yousef, you see, it's still standing. And Ramzi Yousef smiled and said to the FBI's assistant director, it wouldn't be if I'd had more money. This was...
In other words, more money to buy explosives, more money to run a more efficient operation than the one he ran from New Jersey in '93.
Exactly. And I mean, we may have seen the second coming of that plan.
John McCarthy is on the phone at the Pentagon. Let me just... John McCarthy, we've now heard reports that 3 planes have been hijacked today. Can you confirm that? Jack McCarthy at the Pentagon? Okay, then let me go quickly to someone named Don Wright, who saw the plane crash into the Pentagon. Don, are you there in Washington?
Yes, I am.
Can you tell us what happened?
Yes, it was about 9:35, and I was looking out our 12th floor windows at 1600 Wilson Boulevard in Rosslyn, Virginia, and I watched this. It looked like a commuter plane, 2-engine, come down from the south, real low, proceed right on and crashed right into the Pentagon.
Went directly into the Pentagon?
That is correct.
Looked like a deliberate act?
A deliberate act, sir.
And can you tell me what direction it came from, Don?
It came from the south.
Came from the south, up along the river, across the land?
It came from the south.
Okay, and did you happen to look at your watch? We thought it was just a little bit before 10 o'clock.
Well, I was watching ABC News, watching the Twin Tower, and about the time I saw the plane, I watched it come in very low over the trees, and it just dipped down, came down right over 395, right into the Pentagon.
And are you fairly sure that it was what we sometimes describe and recognize as a small commuter plane?
Yes, it was.
Good, Don. Thank you very much. Appreciate your help. Don Wright, an eyewitness to the crash at the Pentagon. Now, we have had, as I said, reports today. There are hundreds of reports flying around, and so we beg your indulgence on us saying as often as we do, these are reports. They're sometimes unconfirmed. They're sometimes confirmed. We'll try to make it absolutely clear what we absolutely know and what we're uncertain about. There are now reports around of 3 aircraft having been hijacked today. So we have at least, because we've now had eyewitnesses to 3 apparently deliberate aerial assaults involving the aircraft themselves, 2 on the trade towers in New York City, and 1 on the Pentagon itself, just described by Don Wright as a small 2-engine commuter plane which came up from the south. And we now believe that 3 planes were hijacked, 2 of them from Boston, and 1 from somewhere else. We are not yet sure precisely what's happened. John, you're listening. Just to clarify for people, John, who's one of our leading reporters on crime, knows New York City probably better than anybody in many news divisions. I cannot tell you where that happens. That's either U.S. Air Force or Navy aircraft, fighter aircraft, now on patrol in what we've described as the no-fly zone over New York City today, lest there be one more attempt. John, go ahead.
They've continued evacuations in the area now. They're evacuating Battery Park City, which is a large apartment complex taking up many blocks across the street from the World Trade Center. And they've evacuated the federal court buildings where the terrorism trials of Ramzi Yousef and others were held. Anything that could be a symbolic target is now being emptied out in New York. New York is going into kind of a lockdown mode. I think you'll also see in Washington the same kind of air patrols have been scrambled around principal buildings there.
Okay. We have on the phone one of those people who makes his living analyzing terrorism. Kyle Olson, do you hear me?
Yes, I do.
I wonder if on a day like this anybody wants to be thought of as an expert on terrorism. Be that as it may, and assuming that, and knowing that much of the country is shocked at the apparent breadth of this, are you?
Well, you know, this is the kind of attack that has fallen more into Tom Clancy novels than into actual response planning. Having said that, we've been anticipating for a long time. We've wondered why it's been so relatively quiet. The suggestions of Osama bin Laden's involvement. What has he been doing since Cole? Other groups out there with a real or imagined grudge against the United States. The nature of the event is shocking. The fact that it's happened is not.
Thank you very much, Kyle. Really appreciate it. Kyle Olson.
Yeah, one quick thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
One quick thing. The suggestions that are floating around out there right now. There's apparently this claim from the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine.
Right.
Very interesting to note. If this is legitimate, if this claim stands up, this appears to be the first time this group has targeted Americans. This group has primarily steered away from the more extreme end of the violence scale. They focused less on suicide bombings, more on gun attacks and that sort of thing in the territories against Israelis.
Well,
if this holds up, this is a very different tactic.
Well, if it is true, and of course the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine was very much involved in attacking aircraft in the 1970s, which carried Americans. So certainly would accept your notion that it's a recent attack on Americans. Thank you, Kyle, very much.
You bet.
As Mr. Olson makes clear, there has been at least one claim, and those of us who cover this for a very long period of time are always suspicious of claims. People who cover international terrorism. I'm going to interrupt myself. Linda Douglas, our Capitol Hill correspondent, I think is on the phone, and if she's not, she already reports there has been an explosion of some kind at the Capitol. Is Linda Douglas on the telephone? Let's get her on the phone as quickly as we have. She just reported a couple of minutes ago that the leaders of the Congress, Senator Lott, Senator Daschle, the Republican and Democratic leaders in the Senate, had been taken to some undisclosed secure location. Our general assumption is that there's no panic involved in this, that somebody in the Capitol building, as someone in the White House, has a book which says that when these things happen, here, Thomas, maybe you can confirm this for me, when these things happen, there are certain modalities which you behave, and as you see the hierarchy of the American political establishment, the military establishment being attacked, you want to protect the chain of command.
Absolutely. The first thing they try to do is get everyone in secure positions so they can gather information and make decisions about what to do next. One of the things that law enforcement officials had been planning for is the notion of a multi-tiered attack, an attack occurring in multiple places simultaneously. Because one of the things they've talked about is that terrorists want to project more fear, as much fear as possible. And one of the ways you can do it is to have this notion that attacks are happening on multiple fronts.
Yeah, well, and we've never seen anything like this before in the United States, of course. And in fact, not seen anything like this in my recollection. I've been doing this for 30-some-odd years. I don't recall any multitude of attacks. We've had two suicide bombers in a short period of time in the Middle East. We had the two embassies in Africa, in Kenya and in Tanzania, the attack 2 summers ago in the United States. But the notion that terrorists, either an organization or organizations, plural, should be able to mount a concerted effort against the United States in this way, causing in this instance so many casualties, in the instance of the trade tower certainly so many casualties, is going to astound people in the political and military and intelligence establishment.
Absolutely. The notion that you could have multiple attacks like this, they had been planning for it, they had not seen it. This is a extraordinary escalation, one that they were predicting would happen, but no one would think that would happen this quickly.
Okay. John Miller?
I think...
let me just interrupt. I apologize again. We're now looking at a helicopter over the Pentagon. That makes perfect sense this morning. But given the fact that we're all sensitive to the presence of any aircraft, that was a helicopter that just flew across the screen. That is, and as we had at least one eyewitness say this was an attack on the Pentagon from the south. He described it quite confidently as resembling a commuter aircraft, which is to say smaller than a small private aircraft and not as large as a commercial jet. It may have been a prop jet. It may have been a jet, but it's a smaller version of the jets which so many people in so many middle-sized American cities are now accustomed to seeing.
In terms of the realm of terrorism, this is going to be a real first test, literally by fire, for the Bush administration. You recall, after the embassy bombings in East Africa, the Clinton administration waited about 10 days and launched a missile attack against the camps of Osama bin Laden, who they felt confident at that time they could say was responsible for it and who has since been charged in it. In this case, I think this ratchets up.
Excuse me. This is the Pentagon we're looking at now, according to my monitor. And again, it is hard to grasp what part of the building. We do not know if they're in the courtyard or outside, but you can see that fairly considerable amount of damage has been done. We do not know whether these are offices or storage areas. The Pentagon is full of many thousands of people.
You're listening to live coverage of an apparent terrorist attack on the United States of America. Live coverage from ABC News. I'm Jim Hickey in New York, joined by my colleague Karen Chase. Just to recap now, there have been 3 apparent attacks that we know of. 2 in New York, 1 at the Pentagon in Washington. Shortly before 9 o'clock Eastern Time this morning, a plane flew into one of the twin towers of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan and exploded on impact. About 20 to 25 minutes later, as TV cameras from helicopters were rolling, a second aircraft flew into the second twin tower, the South Tower, and it too exploded on impact. About an hour after that, a third plane reportedly flew into the courtyard of the Pentagon, and it too exploded on impact. All 3 buildings are currently on fire. There are untold numbers of casualties. We have no idea how many casualties there are now, but thousands upon thousands of people work in both towers of the World Trade Center, and now there is only one tower of the World Trade Center. The South Tower has completely collapsed.
Terrorism at the World Trade Center. The latest update from WABC Radio News.
This is Phil Boyce along with Curtis Sliwa, Ron Kuby, Babita Hariani, and John Gambling. I think we're all stunned in here at what is beginning to sink in just over the last few minutes as to the magnitude. And, of course, the collapse of one of the 2 World Trade Center towers is obviously devastating and monumental.
Yes, and in fact, we have on the line, as he's been all morning long, Commissioner Jerry Camerata of the city of New York, who was forced to leave the World Trade Center initially and was in the streets, I believe, when the South Tower collapsed. Are you there, Jerry?
Yeah, I'm here, Curtis.
Can you just describe for us what the scene was like and what it continues to be like with the collapse?
Well, it's no less as spectacular, dramatic, but in this case so sorrowful as when you see a stadium being blown up purposefully, floor after floor from the high floors down to the low, one at a time being blown up. And just to see that in the background of all of us having to run away from it, it's just absolutely horrific. And now, continually, as probably many of your listeners are actually seeing concurrently on television, just to see these people falling out of the upper floors, it's just beyond belief.
Now, Jerry, as you were evacuated along with people working with you, do you have any idea of how many people might have been taken out of both the towers?
Have no idea about the towers. We were next to the towers, and I understand in that building there could have been 50,000 people. These buildings are absolutely incredibly packed with people. I mean, now one has to suspect with one tower down for all of those that were on the lower floors trying to get down the stairs to what extent they may still have been in the building. With all of the panic, it's amazing how many people are helpful and how many people are trying to console those that are not taking this very, very well. But
Jerry, you mentioned that you said that when the South Tower collapsed, you looked as though to you that the floors were being blown out. Were they collapsing on their own, or were there actual explosions taking place?
It looked like there were explosions one after the other. Now, whether or not that was reality in the final analysis, that's the way it looked. It looked just as if a stadium was purposely being imploded, one right after the other as the building started to come down. I tell you, our eyes were more on where we were going, not behind us, as to what was taking place.
Jerry, it looked like...
The debris right now is all the way up to Duane and beyond on all of the streets surrounding the World Trade Center.
So people who were standing around outside or emergency workers, they would have been, of course, in the line of the debris.
They could have been as well, and that came down so quickly. So anybody in that immediate area, I mean, we just don't know right now.
Well, now, Jerry Camerata, today is a primary day, an election day. I would think it behooves us just to cancel it because so many people can't even get an opportunity to vote, and we need the continuity of the service provided by the Giuliani administration to at least initially get us through this horrific tragedy that this city, no city in the United States has ever experienced before.
Well, I guess your point is well taken, Curtis. Right now, I just think about the people that are out on the street and the help we're trying to get them. We'll leave it up to the wisdom of the politicians to decide how they want to deal with that. But certainly,
this administration continually demonstrates its ability to come together and to mobilize.
Jerry Camerata, what's the administration currently advising people to do? I know all across the city people are hearing this, they're seeing this, their loved ones are at work or at school. Is there any advisory, any advice? Are you telling people to stay where they are, to go home?
Well, right now, I know my agency, the Department of Youth and Community Development, has been evacuated, and I understand all other city agencies in and around the downtown area have been evacuated. Now, to be evacuated and where one can go, that will be something else. Since all of the bridges and tunnels are closed right now, the best advice I can give, if there is any evacuation from downtown, just simply walk as quickly and as carefully as you can, and just keep walking uptown, away from the center of the city. And I would move particularly to the west side, where probably you'd be least vulnerable right now. But that's just my best evaluation, and perhaps not the best of authorities.
Jerry, it looked like when the World Trade Center building, the South Tower, collapsed, that it may have brought down another smaller building near it. Do you know anything about that?
No, other than what I just briefly, as going into one of the shops here to get to the phone, saw it perhaps could have been the tower or the lesser building where OEM is, although I'm not sure. As you know, there's a connecting facade above the road between OEM building as well as the World Trade Center, and that looked like it had been damaged and it had fallen onto the street where many of the cars are.
Well, now, Jerry, Commissioner Jerry Camerata, with the emergency management building being evacuated because of the two tremendous explosions as a result of the airplane crashes into both towers, where are the vital services now that the city is providing being headquartered? Are they coming out of One Police Plaza?
I don't know, and again, I was only at OEM because of my role also as a member of the Board of Ed, trying to make sure that our schools down here were well protected and provided for. You'd have to determine that from the mayor's office, but I'm sure that is being coordinated without any difficulty and with great dispatch.
All right, well, Commissioner Jerry Camerata, if you can continue to kindly keep us updated as this continued tragedy unfolds.
If I also may add kindly that any of the children or any of the parents that have children in our down the City Hall area schools, PS 234, Stuyvesant, and a couple of others, those children are safe. They are in the cafeteria. We have security there, and they are being cared for well. And the principal is available if need be.
Well, thank you very much for your updates, Commissioner Jerry Camerata of the City of New York. We'll be hearing from him in the future, also getting other updates from George Weber, who's down at the scene of the collapse of the South Tower of the World Trade Center.
You know, on a good day, this section of New York City is hard to access. In this situation, I just wonder what the emergency services are having to go through just to get anywhere close to help anybody.
And I don't know if anybody, I'm sure you all caught it when Jerry said it, and we all had a gasp in here when Jerry estimated the number of people that were in the World Trade Center might have been as high as 50,000 people.
Oh, at least, absolutely so. And not to mention the buildings that surround that area downtown.
We are literally talking about a horrific attack on the United States of America. Earlier, someone compared it to Pearl Harbor. I don't know what the amount of death in Pearl Harbor was off the top of my head, but and we can't speculate now on what this might be. We won't know probably for days, but this is certainly rivaling that attack on the United States.
And as we kind of recap and look back at what's happened so far, air transportation throughout the entire United States has ceased, and it will be shut down for at least 7 hours. That's the latest. We believe that the President of the United States has left where he was in Sarasota, Florida, and gotten aboard Air Force One. The Congress has been moved to a secret location. All of the Pentagon has been attacked, and therefore I would assume that the military hierarchy have all been moved to some sort of bunker somewhere.
Of course.
Because this is, as you point out, Phil Boyce, an attack on the United States.
Right here in New York, all the bridges are shut down, the tunnels are shut down, you can't get in, you can't get out. The subways, I don't believe, are functioning.
That's right, they're not
working. The stock exchange has suspended trading.
NASDAQ just decided not to open at all.
The consequence of this is mind-boggling.
It is, and it's something that we will be talking about this for many years to come. And just to recap, and you guys helped me with this because it was all happening so fast. We first saw about 10 minutes till 9 when it looked like that something had happened at the World Trade Center.
On the North Tower, and there were early reports that a plane had crashed into the North Tower. That was on fire. Then at 9:03, we were all watching live coverage of that. Another plane, it looked like a jet, it looked like a large jet, crashed into the South Tower. We then heard word that a helicopter or some other vehicle had attacked or crashed into the Pentagon. The Pentagon was on fire, and then just a short while ago...
Well, we've had also, though, conflicting reports about an original attack that may have occurred at the White House. No confirmation on that. An attack possibly at the Capitol. No confirmation on that. But what we do know is clearly the Pentagon and the World Trade Center have taken direct hits. There's no question, and there are many, many injuries and possibly many, many deaths.
And it does appear that a very good likelihood that the 3 planes that all attacked these facilities were hijacked this morning. We had the report that 2 of them were hijacked from Boston this morning. One of them apparently an American Airlines plane, but that's about the extent of it. We haven't been able to get a confirmation on the other 2 planes, and in fact that information is a little bit sketchy, so we don't know for sure. But of course, all the airplanes now have been grounded, and all the airports have been shut down, and this whole country is under a terrorist attack, a terrorist advisory or warning, whatever you might want to call it, something we've never had in this country that I recall.
Well, we saw Phil Boyce, as was pointed out by the ABC TV news correspondent, 10 days after Osama bin Laden was successful in one of his attacks. The Clinton administration responded. And with that, there were the feeble attempts to get at him in his training bases, the Mujahideen training bases in Afghanistan. And remember the missiles that we sent into that aspirin factory in the Sudan. This is going to require quite the stronger response from the G.W. Bush administration.
And I think probably everybody would agree with me when we say that if we know who is responsible, the strongest possible action should be taken, whether it be individuals, paramilitary organizations, small organizations, or nations. But, of course, right now, there's absolutely no indication as to who is responsible for this.
And let me just say that we got an AP News alert from the Associated Press just a couple of minutes ago that at 10:23, that was about 4.5 minutes ago, a car bomb exploded outside the State Department. And that's all the information that we have right
now. The State Department where?
In Washington, D.C.
Obviously, whatever happened here, it was extremely well coordinated, much better coordinated than any other attack in the United States or anywhere that I can think of worldwide had been coordinated in the past.
Well, we will be going to an ABC News update to get caught up on all the latest information. Is that at 30:30, guys? That'll be at 30 seconds past 10:30. This is WABC in New York and WEVD in New York. We are in continuous coverage of this tragic terrorist attack on the United States.
Well, in fact, John Gambling, you were speaking with the terrorist expert who said very directly that the person who has come out overtly and said that he would continue to attack the United States, both internally and externally, was Osama bin Laden. He couldn't even think of any other potential individuals who were involved.
And you're absolutely right. It's just...
We are watching a live shot now from NewsTalkRadio 7 of another building going down. Is that, could someone confirm for me?
Is that the other tower?
Is that the other tower? It looks like the second tower of the World Trade Center has now also collapsed. The second tower is now gone. There is a big plume of black smoke rising above.
That marks the landmark.
Guys, can we go to Channel 7? Are they, can we bring Channel 7 up and see what they're reporting? Let's go live to Channel 7, WABC.
In which all of this has taken place in such a short period of time. 8:45 until now at 10:29.
Nina Pineda, can you hear us? Are you on the line at all, Nina? Nina is just a few blocks from there. And we do not have her amidst the chaos. We have not heard from Joe Torres. This is just so tragic that it's sort of
almost
ridiculous to try to talk through this. It is so horrific.
Until today, the worst act of terrorism on American soil was until today, the worst act of terrorism on American soil. States as well.
Let's switch over to ABC network coverage with Peter Jennings. He is now showing a shot that looks like something out of Beirut. That's the only thing I can
describe. Miller, very briefly, you said to us just a few minutes ago that this was their concern, that they thought after the first tower went that the second one was vulnerable.
There was constant intelligence that terrorist organizations, and specifically that financed by Osama bin Laden, was trying to mount another series of attacks against the United States. Of course, they thought of the symbolic targets. The most symbolic was the World Trade Center because it had been attacked yet not brought down. And it seems that those concerns that even caused the World Trade Center to hire a